All right, Dave, thank you. A bill is heading to President Barack Obama's desk to help combat human trafficking here in the U.S.
The bill was introduced by Michigan Senator Gary Peters. It focuses on training health care workers to recognize the signs of human trafficking in their patients. Also helps provide tens of millions of dollars to states to support human trafficking victims, and this could be a huge boost, of course, for the state of Michigan.
In 2013, the Michigan Commission on Human Trafficking found this is a serious problem in our state. They said it's partly due to a lack of data, lack of awareness, and professionals failing to recognize the indicators of human trafficking. That same year, an FBI investigation led to 18 human traffickers being arrested in Metro Detroit.
Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is the author of that bill, Senator Gary Peters. First of all, Senator, thanks for joining us. And who would think, this is Michigan, who would think human trafficking is an issue here?
Well, that's true, and I think, the one thing, as you look into this crime of human trafficking, which is one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the world, a lot of people, when you hear that, you think this is happening in a different country, you think it's happening in a different city, a different state, but you actually find that it's happening in every community and probably in your home community, and we've seen it in suburban communities in the greater Detroit area. It occurs everywhere. It's serious, which is why we need to deal with it.
Senator, define human trafficking for us. What's the problem that we're looking at?
Well, these are folks that can be women and men, although oftentimes women that are brought in for the sex trade, are controlled by individuals, live in fear, often live with an awful lot of intimidation, and that's why it's important for folks to be able to recognize the signs of someone who may be trapped in this system. And what we find is that the folks who are able to usually have the first chance to identify a victim is going to be a health professional. Oftentimes that's when they're outside of the circle that they're in, they're going to go to see a health professional, and the signs sometimes are very obvious. It could be broken bones, it could be bruises, but for the most part it tends to be much more subtle, and that's why it's important that our health professionals recognize some of those very subtle signs that they may be dealing with someone who is a victim of trafficking, and then once they do that, then get the help that they need. So the legislation that I worked to write is going to provide a grant for best practices to be developed in a medical school and a nursing school, and then a curriculum that will mean that every medical professional, when they get their training, a part of that training is understanding what are the potential warning signs that the patient sitting in front of them may be a victim of trafficking.
Now, you're a Democrat. You worked with Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican, on this issue together. How did that happen, and why is it we don't see enough of this these days in Washington?
Well, we definitely need to see more bipartisanship. It's something I've focused on from day one. Bill Cassidy is someone who came over with me from the House, but he's one of the freshmen. I'm in a class of 13 new senators. There are 12 Republicans. I'm the lone Democrat, and I'm really working very hard to work with all of my colleagues to make sure that we can write legislation. So this is an example where Senator Cassidy and I saw a problem. This is about common sense problem solving. This should not be partisan. This is about what's best for the country, and more importantly, what's best to really reach out to folks who are in a very difficult situation to make sure they get the help that they need.
Senator, as parents, for parents who are watching, is this something you need to be concerned about with children? Is human trafficking of children a big issue as well?
It is. In fact, there is a young woman who was very involved in the trafficking issue to bring it to light in the greater Detroit area. She grew up in Birmingham and was actually brought into the trafficking trade through a high school. Her parents weren't even aware of this. She later came public and has been very instrumental in bringing the issue of human trafficking to a broader awareness in the community. So, here was a young lady who was brought into that trade in the city of Birmingham, growing up in Birmingham. So this is another example where this can occur anywhere at any time. This is something that we have to be very aware of, and why it's so important that people are trained to recognize these signs. Parents aren't going to get that training, but the medical professionals that deal with these children could have that training that can be very helpful.
We've been hearing also this problem tends to get a little worse around the times of big international events, things like the Grand Prix coming here. Why is that a problem? And second of all, is what you've done today, this bill, going to do anything to help us out this cycle, which is, of course, 2 weeks away?
Well, certainly some aspects of this we got to get the president to sign it. It just passed the House yesterday. The president will sign it in a matter of days. We'll try to move it as quickly as possible. This grant, the part of my bill which will train professionals, that'll take a little time to get up and running. But it is important that we get at it right away. The reason you see trafficking around big events is that primarily trafficking is related to the sex trade. And whenever you have folks coming into large events, the demand for these services tends to increase, and you'll have people coming into the area looking for customers, basically. Michigan, we are actually one of the leading states, as you mentioned earlier in your opening, in the country in terms of trafficking, primarily because of our border location. It also lends itself to the movement of people, and some of those people, unfortunately, are victims of trafficking. Yeah,
it's an issue that we need to talk about, and Senator Gary Peters, we thank you very much for what you've done on this.
All right, still ahead on the Now Detroit mass transit.